Welcome back. This is our second video on simple Mendelian genetics. Last time we talked about nomenclature, and I'm going to review that very quickly, or at least review one important part of that, and then introduce a new idea which can also cause a little bit of confusion. And so we're going to keep this one short and simple, and hopefully that way you can segregate this in your mind and have a little better understanding of the more complex concept that I'm going to introduce here. So last time I introduced the idea of genes and alleles, and I used the two robots here, and robots as a group to represent genes, for example, and then we can talk about variations of robots. We can have Wally, a PC, or his girlfriend representing a Mac. So bear in mind, these are metaphors. They're ways for me to represent an idea to you. I'm not saying that genes are robots, obviously. I'm just trying to make the point that you can have a broad category and then something specific. So genes would be robots and alleles would be variations of those robots, like Wally or his girlfriend here. And so there's a relationship to what we call characteristics and traits. When we talk about an organism's appearance or its phenotype, remember, we have a special language to talk about the phenotype. And this gets a little confusing because there are two words which are commonly used to describe phenotype, and they're often used interchangeably, and I'd like to move us on a little bit from that kind of common incorrect usage. So when you hear people talking about phenotypes, you'll hear people describing characteristics or traits, and they're often used interchangeably, they're often used synonymously, and that's not really the best way to use these two words. Characteristics are things like color or height. So they're a category in which there are subcategories. So let's just think about color, for example. Color as a characteristic can then have variations. Red, blue, green, purple, yellow, all those kinds of variations. Those are the specific types of color. And so when we think about color, that would be a characteristic. And then if we think about red, we're going to call that a trait. And so we're going to be very specific. So if I said to you, okay, let's take a look at these pea plants here, and we're going to talk about their height. We're going to be talking about the characteristic. But if I said to you, describe the phenotype of the plant on the left, and you said to me, well, it's tall, you'd be telling me a trait. And if you said the plant on the right is short, you'd be telling me a trait again. So there is a relationship between genes and alleles and characteristics and traits. Genes determine characteristics. So in the case of Mendel's pea plants that we're looking at here, there is a gene which controls height. And then there are two variations of that gene, two alleles. And the combination of alleles determines whether the pea plant will be tall or dwarf, short for making things easier. So remember, if you have one of the dominant alleles, so you could have two of the dominant alleles, that includes one of the dominant alleles, or you could have a dominant and a recessive allele, the characteristic of height is going to be the trait of tallness. And if you have two recessive allele, then in the characteristic of height, you would be short. Okay, so genes determine characteristics. So there's a gene for controlling plant height, and the combination of alleles will determine the trait, that is, whether the plant is tall or short. Okay, so that just really covers the relationship between genes and alleles and characteristics and traits. So keep that in mind. The language is important because it means we can communicate effectively. That's it, really short. I'll be back soon for some more genetics.